आज संसद में वित्त मंत्री ने आर्थिक सर्वेक्षण 2016-17 का पेश किया देश के सामने और इस पर बहुत ही खास मेहमान हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं दूसरे स्टूडियो से। मुख्य आर्थिक सलाहकार भारत सरकार के अरविंद सुब्रमण्यम जी और वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार टी.एन. नायनन इस वक्त हमारे साथ जुड़ रहे हैं। मिस्टर नायनन, ओवर टू यू।
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this special program on the economic survey for the year 2016-17. We have with us in the studio the principal author of the survey, Dr. Arvind Subramaniam, who is the Chief Economic Advisor in the Finance Ministry. And this is his third scintillating survey with these three surveys starting 2 years ago, then one last year, and this one today. He has raised the bar on the quality of economic debate, intellectual discourse, exploring issues in brilliant ways, which would certainly spark off debate on a whole range of issues. So, Arvind, first, my congratulations.
Thanks, Daniel.
The survey is also noteworthy, I think, for the integrity and honesty with which it confronts a whole range of issues without trying to paper over problems. It looks at issues squarely in the face, it analyzes what needs to be done, it looks at the prospects of what might be done. So I will go over, in the next half hour, I will go over a whole range of these issues one by one with Arvind. And so Arvind, the first issue that I want to touch upon is that you have actually moderated the expectations of economic growth both this year and next year. This year you're clearly saying that growth will be below 7%, and next year you're pegging it around 7%, a little less or a little more. Now these are fairly sober numbers given what people had come to expect given the record of the last 2 years, so we are seeing a clear slowdown. Would that be the correct reading?
Nayan, first of all, remember that the baseline for this year, which in some ways was the forecast of the CSO advance estimate as well, was about just over 7%. And that was our baseline for this year as well. So what we are saying is that relative to that baseline, we're going to shave off about 1/4 to 1/2 percentage point. And that's kind of our estimate of the impact of demonetization. Now, is that significant or serious in the broader context of what's happened? Question, but I do want to say that the impact of demonetization per se is not as large as some of the other forecasters are saying. The IMF, for example, is shaving reducing GDP growth forecast by 1 percentage point. Ours is based on our analysis is much less. Now, in terms of last year versus this year, I just would, at the risk of becoming a bit technical, I want to sound a note of caution. Remember that last year real GDP growth was something like 7.55, 7.6%, and so relative to that it seems like a decline. But remember that last year and this year GDP deflators, because the CPI and the WPI were diverging so much,
yes,
that what the assessment of underlying real GDP growth was, and therefore what the trend is over time, is also a little bit difficult.
I take both points very well.
Yeah.
That there were special circumstances in the inflation issue last year, and this year your assessment of the impact of demonetization is half or less than that of most observers who said the impact will be 1%. Former Prime Minister said 2%, and you're saying it's half or 1/4. So I take that point.
But for the next year, see.
So I want to come to the next year. The point is that the narrative so far has been the recovery will be there next year, and your scenario does not suggest a strong recovery. It's just a very mild recovery.
No, the thing is that look, Nayan, remember that if this year has come down, correspondingly, next year will also have to come down but relative to this year, next year, we foresee a recovery. In large part because we think the effect of demonetization, which we've calculated very carefully, should run its course by the end of this year.
But even next year is going to be lower than the previous 2 years.
Again, we get into these difficult discussions about deflator and things.
Fine.
But, yeah,
Okay.
but going forward, I think that part of the reason things are still not as strong as they should be is because investment has been disappointing even this year as well, which we should acknowledge. It's because of the twin balance sheet problem. But I think what might be different next year is that we expect the recovery to be a little bit more reliant on export growth and a little bit less reliant on consumption than it was this year. I think so that could be the difference. And if that happens, I think that opens up possibilities for spillovers to investment and so on. But overall, I think that the pattern of growth where consumption and government have driven growth and investment and exports have been a drag, to some extent that's going to be altered next year.
I understand, but this year we had two kickers. One was the good monsoon and the second was the pay commission boost. Those were supposed to give a kick to growth rates and that has been lost.
Well, but remember
because
that
it comes on the back of two bad monsoon years.
Yeah.
And so we haven't seen that benefit.
Well, but on the other side, I would say, Nainan, is that we have had a big fiscal consolidation this year. 3.9 to 3.5%. It's about half percentage point of a GDP reduction. So that's offset to some extent the gains you've got from. And remember, with the monsoon, I think it's absolutely true that agricultural GDP growth will recover this year relative to last year. But in our minds, we think of agricultural growth 2007-8. Remember, the difference is that while quantities are up, prices are not as high as they were in the past because international prices have come down. So real income growth in the agricultural sector is not as strong as it has been. Yeah.
Your previous two surveys, the first one and even the second one, had mentioned that the Indian economy is in a sweet spot. Now you say that it is time for a recalibration of expectations. So do we need to lower our expectations about what we should expect for the future? Is that what you mean?
See, I think what we say, what I say specifically in this is that that I think basically we need to work much harder to ensure that, in the words of the survey, the sweet spot is enduring, not evanescent. I think that we have to work harder. I think there's this whole, the backlash against globalization. I think the world is in a very different place than in the last 2 years in a very fundamental sense. It's not just oil prices, it's not just interest rate hikes. It's about how all these advanced economies view openness, view capitalism, view globalization. And already today we see signs of that. So there is a kind of the word we use is that these developments, it's forebodingly laden with darker possibilities. And that, I think, is going to impact on us. So we have to work much harder on that. That's on the international side.
So how negative are you on the global context? Because you're also expecting some export growth.
Yeah,
compared to the past.
I think in next year maybe
because
less
IMF
bearish.
forecast for the world economy is slowing down.
No, it's
and
higher.
it's slowing down of trade also.
No, I think you have to be careful here. The IMF forecast for next year, world growth, is greater than for this year. Okay, I think it's from 3.1 to 3.4.
Smaller than what it was 1 year ago.
I think they've kept the forecast unchanged. So that's it. So in the short run, I think there could be some boost. But I think over the medium term, I think one has to worry because, as you rightly said, first, what's going to happen on protectionism, but already there was a secular decline in the export to GDP ratio at the world level.
Yes.
Yeah. So if that continues, the space for us to occupy, what is a shrinking space, especially if China maintains its momentum, I think is going to be increasingly difficult. So that's part of why I think we have to be.
So if you look at a 5-year perspective, in your previous surveys, you had mentioned 8 to 10% as a possibility. Would you still say 8 to 10% is possible, or now do we have to expect less?
No, I still think we should aspire to. We can still do 8 to 10%. We have to work.
Really, you think so?
We have to work much harder. I think that would be my the kind of, because remember that even last year's survey we said that 8 to 10% requires a favorable external environment. In the years that we did 8.5–9%,
Yes.
our manufacturing and services exports were growing at 25%
That's
in
right.
dollar terms a year.
Yes.
And if we can't do that, then we have to recalibrate expectations. But I think there is another element which I think you've picked up on, which is that, I sense that the Indian economy, while a lot of, I highlight what the reforms that have been taken this year.
Yes.
I think the GST, for example, is just simply transformational
Yes.
in terms of what the government has done, which I think is phenomenal. Other things as well. But in this, reflecting more, we identify what we call 3 kind of meta challenges that face the economy.
Yes.
Much deeper challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to come to those challenges to see what
Yeah.
your assessment is, whether we will meet them. But first, I want to also look at the positive side
Yeah.
and say that you have looked at the combination of growth rates, inflation, and fiscal deficit as an analytical way of looking at where the economy is.
Yeah.
And in that sense, overall, today we are better off,
Yeah.
or about the same. as a year ago.
I think, Nainan, we should never forget that we take for granted our macroeconomic stability. It's one of those things you take for granted, but when you don't have it, you know what the consequences are.
Absolutely.
You remember July, August 2013,
Yes.
where we were on this,
Absolutely.
and then nothing seems possible.
Yes.
Now, at least things are possible
Yes.
because we have this absolute foundation of rock solid macro stability.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I think that should not be
I
overlooked.
agree with that, yeah.
That's one. Second, I think there have been a number of reforms that have happened. I think that the GST is transformational. I think we've made a lot of progress on FDI. I think the Aadhaar bill and the MPC are also very big achievements. And of course, the whole JAM initiative, goes from strength to strength.
Yes.
I think we can build upon these, and how much more we do will then depend upon these more meta challenges that we need to overcome.
I want to address one specific issue on demonetization before going on to your whole discussion of this basic income idea.
Yeah.
And the issue on demonetization is that we've paid a certain price. Now the payoff is to come in the future.
Correct.
And you've correctly pointed out that that payoff will depend on the follow-up steps that we take.
Yeah.
And you've outlined a whole series of steps, which I don't want to go into the list. But my question to you is, do you see those steps actually materializing, or will our system not be able to deliver, like lower stamp duties?
I again don't want to get too detailed, but for example, the follow-up actions bringing land and real estate in the GST.
Yes.
I think we should push for it.
No, but
it's on the agenda, and I've not given up hope on that at all. I think that that's one. Second, reducing tax rates and stamp duty. Stamp duties are with the states. We'll have to see. But tax rates, let's see what happens. I think that's one thing. Continuing the momentum towards digitalization. I think that's something that I think we have to keep at it. Just remonetizing quickly. I think that's also, after January it's beginning. And the final one, I think, which I think you probably have in mind also, is that, can we streamline tax administration? I think that's a big one. I think the awareness that there are anxieties about overzealous tax administration, it's very well taken. I think here one has to strike a balance between, because demonetization requires that those who've offended get punished. I think
Yes.
there's that. At least there's a political imperative on that.
But you don't want zero.
Huh? But you don't want it to, So it has to be a bit surgical, and I think the way to accomplish that is that to be much smarter. I think big data, data analytics. I think that's the way forward.
Of course.
If we have to do that, and I think already the systems are being set up to actually do that. So I think this is very much doable. Very much should be done.
But what probability would you put on it?
That's a tough one. I'll never put. But on this, I think there's something that I don't want to evade the issue, because in the chapter on demonetization, we actually say these long-term benefits, which can happen. We identify markers of success.
Yes.
It's not something that you say, in this nebulous way, benefits.
Yeah,
You can
very
identify
specific.
markers. Yeah.
Yes.
3 or 4 markers we have. One, will the equilibrium cash to deposits, cash to GDP ratio over the next 1 or 2 years, will that be lower relative to the past?
Yes.
Which we can monitor, right? 2, the number of taxpayers, the income reported to the tax authorities, does that go up over time or not? I think we should monitor that. 3, on a sustained basis, will real estate prices come down? Of course, the early evidence was that they did come down, but let's see if it's sustained or not. And finally, just as we want to see more direct taxpayers, more indirect taxpayers, more registrations, will we see that? So these are 4 clear markers, and let's monitor that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. But since you touched upon it, I want to raise that question. You've got at the beginning of the survey 8 interesting sets of facts. And one of them is to compare the number of taxpayers, income taxpayers in the country with the total number of voters.
Yeah.
And this is a source of constant debate in India, that why do we have, with 1.3 billion population, a taxpayer base of only 36 million?
Yeah.
And it just seems crazy that only so few people pay tax.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about your data set and the charts you have is that in the G20 countries, which are the 20 largest economies in the world, we are 13th out of 18 democracies, and we are by far the poorest. So clearly, you are probably middle of the road in terms of taxpayers to voters if you adjust for income. So this is not an unusually low number of income taxpayers. This is what you should actually expect to see.
Yeah, I think that's it's a very good point you've raised. See, last year's survey, we actually did this in a little bit more sophisticated manner. Here, we've reproduced the facts. I think even allowing for the fact that we are a democracy, I think we should have substantially more taxpayers. Yeah. So we're not.
But on a comparison with the large economies,
Yeah.
We're okay.
I mean,
It's the middle. You're not an outlier out on the fringe.
Yeah, but I still think we should do more. We can do more, because remember
we can do more.
Yeah.
Of course, we can do more. But we're not an outlier, which is the normal debate.
Yeah, we're not an egregious outlier.
Yeah.
We're an outlier, not an egregious outlier.
No, 13th in a group of 20 is.
But I want to see which the other 5 democracies are that we.
There are several which are much wealthier than you, who have a lower ratio of taxpayers to voters: Mexico, Argentina, Turkey, a whole series of countries. So
See, but see, it's a point very well taken. But to me, Nainan, the difference with these other countries is that, we've been a democracy for a much longer time than these countries, right? So the disjunction between our political development and our fiscal development, I think that creates a whole set of, complications which I think we need to address. And remember, this is an area where the government is, very committed to increase the number of taxpayers.
All I'm saying is we need to
calibrate a little
expectations
bit.
of what you think is possible.
And what is feasible, exactly.
Yeah.
That's true for almost everything we do in India.
I know. Before time starts running out, I want to get to basic income. You've got a fascinating discussion, and you laid out all the pros, cons. You're not hiding any facts. You've laid it all out, the pluses, minuses, everything. I want to zero in on one issue, which is that the idea of a universal basic income for everybody in the country, so that you end poverty, absolute poverty, once and for all with this one measure, costs you 4 to 5% of GDP by your calculation. And that is affordable and makes sense only if you can get rid of a whole bunch of subsidies, which is the point you made. And you raised the question that if you do the basic income program, will this end up being an add-on to the existing subsidies instead of being a substitute?
Yeah.
Because the list of subsidies you are listing, which you want to get rid of, frankly, I don't see any government in this country tackling those subsidies. So by raising this issue and suggesting it as an option, are you now sort of opening a Pandora's box?
Well, in some ways, the job of the survey is to open Pandora's boxes. I think in some
Meaning
ways.
you're putting ideas in people's heads. They will take the idea, and they won't take the rest of the idea that it's a replacement for subsidies, and do both, which means fiscal disaster.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I think that that is why we've been very cautious about how we've kind of presented it. We've not said, I think it is a compelling idea in some ways. I think, as you know, this chapter is written up as a conversation that one could have with the Mahatma, or the Mahatma would have with himself.
Yes.
Which I think, because in a sense, the Mahatma would have been conflicted by this for precisely these reasons. But I think that, what you're saying is spot on, is the key problem, I think, that it can't become an add-on. That's why I think the time has come for it to be discussed, not for it to be implemented, because we're not there yet in terms of phasing out these subsidies. But I think we must have this discussion. See, if you look at the effectiveness of existing programs, and this is not even the subsidies, by the way. We've done some new work on that. There are two maps which show...
You've got the program list.
Yeah, you see the map. Where there's poverty is where there's a shortfall of funding. And this is intrinsic to the programs. It's intrinsic because, the states that are poor are the ones that will not be able to access existing programs.
Yes.
So I think, there's a very important, analysis that we've carried out, an idea we've put forward. But yes, there is that red line that you've drawn, that unless you can phase it out, I think this cannot see the light of day in any realistic sense.
Okay, the other critical issue, particularly from the context of growth, is this whole business of very low levels of investment. You've raised it, you've said, I've read all your surveys, so I don't even remember which year's survey it was, but they're all yours, so I'll raise it with you, that the level of investment through the budget for us is less than 2% of GDP, which is the emerging market norm, sort of benchmark, so to speak.
Correct.
And I've seen figures in the recent weeks which say it is now down to 1.4%. Now, this is a very low level of capital investment through the budget, particularly at a time when you have what you raised in your first survey, which is the twin
balance sheet problem, that your banks have bad debt and your companies are laden with bad debt. Neither can invest or lend, and so you have a serious problem that private investment cannot take off. Public investment is not happening despite everything that you've tried. So, and you can't have growth without investment. So, and although you've highlighted these issues now for the third survey in a row, we don't seem to be any closer to a solution. Okay, so two things, you've raised two things, right? One is, has there been adequate public investment offset to the weak private investment? And I think there, as you know, we've argued in favor of this, but I think more needs to be done, but there are limitations on implementation capacity and so on. But I think on the private sector side and the twin balance sheet side, this year for the first time we've been explicit about proposing a solution.
Yes.
The problem is hard, it's politically difficult, and the key thing is that the existing ones...
If I'm not wrong, you are suggesting creating what is called a bad bank.
Yeah,
and putting all the bad debts into that one bad bank so that the existing banks are free from the problem.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
But I think that's the description of it. But I think why that is the case is because the existing solutions have not worked. It's a decentralized approach. You need political cover, and that's what this will...
I've got you. There's much more that we can discuss. Unfortunately, time has run out. So I must say once again, thank you, Arvind, not only for appearing on this program, but also for the 3 surveys, magnificent surveys that you've done from the Finance Ministry and raised the quality of debate in the country on these issues. Thank you very much, viewers, for being with us, and good evening to you.